Alright, hello everybody. My name's Plywood, and this is going to be a marathon submission of Steel Battalion for the original Xbox, played on the 2080 campaign. That's the first campaign you have access to on New Game. So some of you may be a little bit flummoxed, a little bit scared. What the heck are you holding right now? What is going on? What is this monstrosity? Well, Steel Battalion is one of the most niche and cool games released on the Xbox. We have 2 joysticks, 3 pedals, and a whole lot of love to try to control a large mech called a vertical tank, or as I will be referring to them as VTs. And there's a whole different set of VTs, but the main things you have to know starting out is, one, if you don't eject, if you die, like you lose control of your VT and you have to exit early, you have to hit the eject button. If you don't do that, it's actually an automatic game over, and your save is deleted, permadeath. So don't ever do that. At the very start here, what we're doing is starting up our mech. We have to flip 5 toggle switches on the left side, and then I'm going to press the start button once all those bars go past the line. There's a little line there. That's the indicator of when you need to press start. Once all the bars are past that, you go. And we're going to do our first bit of combat here against a Veach or a Vitsi. There's so many different ways you could call that thing. We just have to take out 2 Vitses here in this introductory tutorial area. And right here, I'm trying to fire at this Vits, who's kind of being mean and walking away, which is not typically what the Vits does. Usually the Vits comes out into the clearing, but he's walking away from us, which is really annoying. So we lost about 10 seconds there, unfortunately, due to that, but it's no big deal. The first stage is really about getting your bearings and trying to understand how to aim and fire and all that, and typically if you're starting out in this game, that's going to be the stage you die on and be very confused because you didn't read the manual. And trust me, this is not a game where you don't want to read the manual. You gotta read the manual. So, we are playing with the Decider VT. This will be our vertical tank of choice for several stages until we get access to the Generation 2 VTs. There's 3 different generations of vertical tanks in this game. We will be playing with the 1 and 2, the first and second. We will not have access to the 3rd generation. That's the most advanced models. Once again, we close the cockpit hatch, and now we're going to be looking at our monitor. Press the ignition, and then flip the toggle switches. And then I will be flipping them back, just so I can prepare for the next stage. And the operating system starts. And then once all the bars go by, okay, work 100%. So, the basic premise of this game is we are a completely new recruit to operating vertical tanks. We were supposed to go through months of training, but our training facility got attacked and we were thrown into the Decider mech suddenly to defend ourselves, and from there we are helping the effort. That is the basic premise of this game. The plot really doesn't matter too much. It's all about that wonderful vertical tank simulation. In this stage, we are storming a beach, and then we have to take out enough of the opposing forces to complete the level. So you'll see me shooting at some Vitses and these little mechanical things called giraffes. Those giraffes they don't have any pilots in them. These Vitses do, however, as long as these Vitses actually, hit the eject button, they're all safe. We're just destroying their mech, They're fine, they're fine. We're going to shoot out some of these batteries so we can move on. So one thing you got to be aware of with this game is you can look in certain directions by using this little analog stick on the left side, but just because you're looking in a certain way doesn't mean you're moving in that way. So you have to have a very good sense of spatial awareness while playing this game. That way you'll know where you're moving in relation to your enemies. The one thing you're probably noticing me doing is a little dash move, which this game calls the slide step. I call it a dash because it's just a little bit more simple to call it that. So this slide step or dash lets you dash in any direction. You can dash left, right, forward, or backward. You can only dash backwards if you're operating in reverse gear. This is going to be a very key movement technique throughout this game. Not just because it looks cool, but it allows us to dodge attacks and maneuver when we need to. So it's all very useful to use that slide step, get around tight corners, dash away from attacks, and so on. Since we're playing on the rookie difficulty, the attacks from the enemies come fairly slowly, and they deal the least amount of damage. Now, I say that, but it's still a pretty punishing game. If you take hits, you will lose HP. When we actually see the HUD, I'll point out where the HP is, because yes, the HUD is pretty complicated. As you can probably notice, there's a lot of gauges and bars and all kinds of fun stuff. But what you'll notice as well is there's a gear shifter on the left side. I was referring to reverse gear. There are reverse, neutral, first through fifth. Thankfully, there is no clutch in this game. You don't have to use a clutch, but it is like driving a manual car. So you need to shift through the gears to gain speed. So that's one thing you have to be aware of while you're playing this game. And it's a little bit jarring because the left stick controls your steering, of course, your left to right steering. Then I also want to shift my gears while doing so. So you'll see me kind of move my hand back and forth. It's just something you have to get used to with this game. It's really a multitasking simulator. As far as the HUD is concerned for this Gen 1 mech, the orange blocks in the bottom left corner, that represents our HP, so those little squares. Each square represents 25%. If all those disappear, then I gotta eject from my mech. And here I'm actually gonna let off the gas as we're turning up this hill. We need to go take out 3 vertical tanks, 3 vortexes. Now, when you're turning in this game, it really depends on the mech you're using, but generally speaking, it's a good idea to let your foot off of the gas completely. That way you won't lose your balance. You'll know you're losing your balance if you start going horizontal. And at that point, you're gonna fall to the ground and cover your display with dirt. It's not sightly. It's unsightly, even. So I'm going to be trying to use a technique here called clip dumping to take out these mechs very quickly. So there's a button here on the main console called magazine change, and that's how you replace your magazine for your main weapon. Now, the cool thing about the magazine change button is that it allows you to fire immediately after using the magazine change button. This means I can dump damage very quickly, improve my DPS, and at that point, I can do a lot of damage with the clip dump. So you'll be seeing me using that throughout the run, just try to keep my damage per second high. Another thing you're probably noticing me doing, again, there's a lot to explain, so excuse me if I'm kind of tripping over my words here. The plasma torch is that little shock rod that I'm using. That's actually propelling me forward, which is very useful since this Gen 1 mech does not move very quickly. So we'll be using that on this stage as well. This is the stage where we're going to go to the broadcast tower on the other end of town. Now, the game doesn't really recommend you use the bridge per se, because if you go too slowly across this bridge, they'll actually blow up the bridge and then you'll sink into the river, and VTs cannot swim. They can like wade across the water if it's shallow enough, but VTs can't swim, so you'd have to eject. But as long as you're moving quickly, it's okay, which is the idea of this whole charade. So we're going to be moving quickly. Unfortunately, those little tanks that we're stepping over do cause us to lose our speed. Ideally, we try to avoid those little mini tanks. Not even vertical tanks, just regular tanks. I mentioned how big these things are. They're huge. Absolutely huge. One thing to deal with in this run is vertical tank luck, or RNG. They're not super predictable as far as how they move. Ideally, they just typically move out of my way if I don't need to fight them, because sometimes they'll just get in your way and I can't get through them. So like this Veets right here, it's moving to the right, which is good, because that means I can wiggle my way around and just zip on through to the tower, which is exactly what I want to see. You can't spam the plasma torch. There's a little meter on the right side that's going up and down. That's my battery. Once that goes completely full, I have to wait a moment for the battery to recharge before I can do that again. All right, so we're going to do a little menu here to change our weapons. Move that. Add smoke and remove my fuel. I don't need extra fuel for this stage. We need all the firepower we can get. So this next stage is arguably one of the most infamous stages if you've ever played this game and gotten this far. This is the battleship, and it is arguably the hardest stage in this run. I kind of forgot to buy some reinforcements, so hopefully I don't actually need them, but if I weren't forgetting, I would have bought some supply drops here, because it's just a risky stage. Obviously, in an actual marathon, I would not forget to buy my resupply. Hopefully I don't need it. Ideally, I don't take enough damage that I would require wanting to pick up a resupply. The deal is that you can buy resupply with supply points. You can buy vertical tanks, you can buy resupply drops, and a helicopter will be deployed, which you can call with this little dial here, that will provide you with ammo, health, and fuel, which are all very useful. However, it does take a while for the helicopter to show up. It takes about a minute or so. It depends on when you call it in. You want to call it in as early as possible. So you might be noticing that I am equipping the smoke here, and the smoke is actually just a way for me to have something in my secondary. You have to have something in both your sub and main weapon. It's a requirement in this game. You can't just like roll with just main weapons. So the smoke, however, is going to help me against the battleship, because it will delay them from shooting me, which is useful, of course, because I don't want to get shot too much. For destroying this battleship, I need to take out the bridge and some other structures in the ship, and the main guns. So there's two on the left side, and one on the right. Alright, I lost a quarter of my HP, but that's okay, that's acceptable. This 315 TR is essentially a twin shot of the 315 smoothbore, so we get twice the firepower. That's why we're using it. And I will be using clip dumping coming up to really pump out the damage against this boat. Essentially, the idea is I'm dodging the attacks with my dashes and also pretty much doing a DPS race. And the goal is to win the DPS race, of course. Not lose it. Losing this DPS race is very bad. But as long as I am aware of the shots coming on the radar, I should be okay. Especially from the main cannon. The main cannons do crazy damage. Really, really big damage. So you do not want to get hit by those. So here we go. I'm going to focus and try not to die, because that would be bad. That's already dead. Rats. Please move. Thank you. Come on. Very important we don't fall off into the water here. Okay. Now the trick is to just go back and forth, avoid the attacks from the VTs from the left. Back and forth, back and forth. Like I said, if you have 75% HP, you can pull this off, but ideally I come into this with full HP. This is my bad that I forgot to buy the resupply, but I was like, oh, let's just roll with it. So that's arguably the hardest stage in the game. We just beat it, so that's really good. Definitely a scary one. This is going to be the first major buy menu of the run, so here we go. We're going to buy some supplies. Okay, that's enough. Buy these new Gen 2 mechs. And now I'm going to switch to the Blade, which is a second generation like mech. And this thing hauls. It hauls. You'll see very quickly because we are going to be using a button called Override on our little dial pad here in the middle. Override is a key that, well, I like to call it overdrive. It's the overdrive button. It's the super fast button because it means your battery is, you can use your battery essentially infinitely, and you also move much more quickly, but it really eats through fuel, so you have to be aware of that. Thankfully, this stage is very short. All we got to do is collect some crates hanging off some trucks in this village area, so it doesn't really matter. However, grabbing the crates off the trucks is pretty weird because the manipulator arm that we're about to use, this little thing, doesn't have a great range, so you have to make sure you're stopping in time, let off the gas, because it's really easy to overshoot. So, okay, good. So one cool thing about the dash, or the slide step, is you can actually modify how much you dash by how much you push in the pedal. Oh, don't lose your balance. So I actually use that from time to time just to modify my, how far I'm dashing. And the more you dash, the more fuel, or excuse me, battery you're gonna use. So light dashes will use less battery and therefore less fuel. And then here, we're gonna stop just around the fence. pull myself forward a little bit here. Come on. Here we go. So we got the 3 crates. That stage isn't hard. It's just kind of hard to optimize. It's hard to do really well because you need to know how to handle the mech extremely well to stop in place. Okay, so this next stage is a lesson in fuel management. So in this blade, we have an extra fuel tank. However, we will be cutting it to the wire more or less. You have to be very wise with how you're using your override and your dashes and your fuel consumption here because we're going to be doing a lot of driving. We need to go look at a factory where they're developing new vertical tank technology and drive away. But it's a pretty long schlep. So we're going to be using a lot of fuel to do so. You may have noticed that I did not adjust my weapons at all with the blade, and that's because it just doesn't really matter. I don't need to adjust for what I'm doing. So it's no big deal. Truly. Again, letting off the gas while we're making those turns. It's very key, just so we can keep ourselves on the ground and not on the ground and the other way. So one thing you're probably noticing is, wow, the screen tearing. And again, this game is designed around realism and being a sim game. So because of how fast you're going, the display is trying really hard to keep up. So that screen tearing is just a factor of the game. When you're going this fast, the vertical tank camera has some trouble keeping up. Wow, you cheesy little VT. Oh. See, that's what happens when you take a turn too tight, but that's okay. It's fine. It's not a big deal. It's just kind of annoying when you fall to the ground. Here we're going to use the dash. So I'm going to let go, dash over, just to get around that corner. These canyons are pretty tight, so. And we've just used the fuel tank. So we're on our last tank. Let's try to take out this scare face. Yes, that is the name of that VT. It's very scary. When they die, or when the tank explodes, you'll hear a laugh. They'll go, ha, 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 ha. Which I guess that's because they're scary. I'm not sure. All right, so we're approaching the door. Once I hit the door, I'm actually just going to make a 180. Okay, so I'm going to switch my sub monitor to look behind me. My commanding officer, Argus, is trying to call me. I am not going to answer him yet because I want to keep my radar up in case I start getting attacks from my rear. This is where chaff grenades are going to become really, really important. Chaff grenades allow you to avoid homing attacks like missiles, and at this point in the game, enemies are going to start using homing attacks way more, so you got to be careful about that. We're going to haul away. And at this point, I'm going to let off on the gas a little bit just so I can manage my fuel a little bit. Like I said, you got to be very careful about your fuel here. I still have enough to get out, but again, it's all about management at this stage. Please get out of my way. Thank you. Use my washer button to remove the dirt off the screen. It's a button a lot of people take a lot of joy out of when I play this game. They're like, can you press the washer button? Because yes, there's a washer button for your display, and a fire extinguisher if you ever get caught on fire. Hopefully that doesn't happen to us. I'm going to override the rest of the way. If you ever run out of fuel, you're not dead, but you have to call in a resupply to help yourself out because you just can't move. So you are just a sitting duck at that point. Okay, so we're going to change mechs now. I'm going to put that, this, and that. Okay. So I just went to the Prominence, which is the mech we'll be using for the rest of the game. The blade is good, but it is not very durable, and it's just not going to cut it when it comes to the next set of missions because we need more fuel, and the Prominence can carry 2 fuel tanks, and it can carry better weaponry, and coming into this part of the game, the latter part of the game, we are going to need all the help we can get with that. Also, I really do like the difference in the operating system startup with the Gen 2 mechs. It's really cool. I think it's the coolest. I know you haven't been able to see the Gen 3 startup, but that one's cool in its own right as well. So, we have to assault the factory. There is a boss at the very end that we're going to fight. We will be using the Asmis. This is an anti-vertical tank homing missile. It does fantastic damage, and it's a fire and forget weapon, so that helps a lot. The only thing is that our enemies can, if they so choose, use their own chaff to disrupt the missile. At that point, I have to wait for the chaff to stop before I fire more Asmis. However, Asmis are very effective, and for many VTs, like the basic ones, the Vitzes and the Scarefaces, they'll just fall over with one hit, and there's just nothing they can do. Here's an example. Yeah, he's just down. Once they're down on the floor, they are in a very, very dangerous position. So, Asmis are very good. You only get 10 per weapon when you equip them, so you have to be aware of that. You have to be careful about that, but otherwise they're really, really good. So we're taking the other way around. And this is the one part I'm a little bit scared of, is just let me through, please. Alright, nice. So that Jarlick was nice and let me through, which is exactly what I want to see. Sometimes that Jarlick can get in the way, and if that's the case, I'm going to use my plasma torch to take it out. But thankfully, I didn't need to do that, so thank you very much. Sometimes the game is nice to you, which is a revolution sometimes. Sometimes this game could be really cruel. Aside from the challenges of just operating the thing, you also have the game to consider. So if I took any damage at this point, I would call in a resupply, but I don't need to. Since I took no damage, I can just move on ahead, which is great. It does save some time. However, we are required to call in a resupply in the next, not the next stage, but the stage following. I will be calling in a resupply. It is mandatory because I need ammo. So we're going to be flipping the switches with our little manipulator arm. There's little trucks fleeing, little jeeps. Again, if you're just wondering about the scale of things, that's the scale. We're going to be using some function buttons that I typically don't use in this area of the game, such as the night scope, which is like a thermogoggle, or not thermogoggle, night vision goggle mode. Get that guy out of the way. That's exactly what we want. Now I'm just going to speed right by. Okay, so I'm going to use the FSS, that's a forecast shooting system, which is effective for these little targets, like these cilias, because they move predictably. The forecast shooting system is exactly what it sounds like. It predicts where the enemy is going to move and fires accordingly. All right, very good. So elevators are probably one of the most challenging things movement-wise in this game. The goal is to stop just as you're entering the elevator and then have your arm facing towards the switch and manipulate the switch and then dash in. However, easier said than done. Again, you have to have a good sense of how the VT drives and when to let go of the gas and if you need to brake, etc. So it's tricky. So here's Bob. Don't be Bob and stand still while trying to fight giraffes. That is a bad idea. Instead, we're going to be doing a very slow drive-by. Taking out all these little enemies. I missed one, but that's not a big deal. I missed two. It's okay. I'll be able to take them out as I open the door. You just need to take out most of them. They're not going to be as threatening, and it's all good. Again, just check out those little infantry trying to fight me. You know, everyone appreciates a trier. I mean, they really are trying, and, you know, hats off to them for trying, but their attacks really don't do much to me. Oh, don't lose your balance. Come on. I don't got time for that. No one's got time for that. I got a speed run to do. Okay. Clean my dirty shield. And drive forward. Once again, I'm going to flip my arm to the side. And then let go of the gas around here. Okay, that was good. Yeah, using that little dash can make all the difference. Just a little tiny dash forward rather than a big dash, and you can get yourself in the proper position. So here it's going to be kind of dark, so just for the heck of it, let's turn on the night scope because, you know, this game has tons of buttons, so why not use the "ooh, we're infiltrating" button. You don't really need this, but hey, why not? Same with the line color change. This isn't really that necessary, but it does help on certain stages depending on the color scheme, the time of day, so you can have some contrast. Okay, so we're going to use FSS here for these cilias. Please don't miss. Thank you. Okay. So this is the boss coming up. It's the Jarlick. We are going to be using the Asmus and some smart dodging and just kind of hang in the back. There is another strat where you use the plasma torch, but it's more risky because of getting up in his face, so. Okay, so he just used chaff, it's fine. So we're just gonna be patient. Hang in the back. Okay, use the chaff. Wait again. You wanna stay away, because he can actually try to run into you if he so chooses. Oops, see, he tried it. Okay, buddy. Alright, he's done. So it's a slower approach, but there's less chance of failure if you're doing it this way, and it's definitely not a fight you want to fail on, because that's a 10-minute level, so it's best to just keep your cool and not try to be super risky about it. Anyways, we now just got a wonderful little weapon. The railgun. This railgun is going to be coming in clutch for the next few stages, because the railgun will one-shot most mechs. So the combination of the Asmus, which will knock down most mechs in one hit, and the railgun, which will take out most mechs in one hit, and you got a pretty dangerous package, my friend. Now, the deal is, though, you gotta be careful with the railgun, because again, you don't have a whole lot of shots, just like the Asmus. So we need to be conscientious of that in these next few stages. This first stage right here with the railgun is really just target practice. Just like, hey, here's this cool toy, give it a go. And you know what, SEAL Battalion? I will. And then after this stage, the game will be like, had fun? Okay, cool. It's time for you to fail. Because the next stage is, yeah, we're gonna be fighting against some really strong, scary mechs. But, we'll be doing some things that'll make them less scary. Which is, pretty cool. As you can see, the railgun fires very far and does, mucho damage, but you gotta wait a moment for it to, as you can see, like, the railgun miss, and that is because of the railgun has to track back. You know, if your railgun is going, let's say it's aiming east, and then you're moving north and you're trying to target to the north, you have to wait for the railgun to rotate around. Again, this game tries to aim for some semblance of realism. Okay, so this is mission 9, and this stage can be a bit scary. We've made it less scary over time. We have to take out enough of the enemy VTs, and we'll be primarily aiming for the Regal dresses. They're like the elite squad VTs. They are Gen 3 VTs. They are no joke. They can do a lot of damage if I'm not careful. However, with the Asmus and trying to exploit long-range battle, we can surmount them. And this is the stage where we are actually required to call in a supply drop. It is non-negotiable. We need the ammo. So here we go. So I'm gonna drive straight forward into this forest, and we're gonna fire Asmus at the scare face. It's gonna be on my left, towards the south. Yes, south. You want to be as far as possible for the Asmus. It has a long effective range, so the further away the better. So we're just gonna drive by, fire 2 missiles, it's dead. I think. Oh, it didn't die. Well, what the heck happened there? Don't make a fool out of me. That is no good. Very weird. I don't know what happened to that missile. Usually that works just fine, but, you know. In typical marathon recording fashion, something's got to go wrong. But that's fine. We have plenty of Asmus to work with. Okay, so we're going to drive past these vortexes. making a whole lot of work trying to hit me, but they're just gonna miss primarily. Ooh, that one actually landed. That one landed too. Okay, well, you know what? I shouldn't be too mean to these vortexes. They're actually doing a good job. That's okay though. We're fine. We're prepared. We got to take out this big group here, and I'm gonna call in the resupply because I need it. And I'm going to focus just so I don't mess up here. Of course, sometimes the regal dresses can chaff, and it's a bit of a problem. Okay, that is an attack you really don't want to be in. It does a lot of damage. Dash, please. Thank you. Okay. Knock that one over. Yeah, unfortunately my poor little supply chopper went down, but that's fine. So right there, I actually did a little technique called call canceling. You can stop the conversation and confirm the conversation and stop it early so you don't have to listen to it. There is really no difference between playing on Japanese and English voice acting. I just choose Japanese for fun. But the English voice acting is very hammy. Okay, so the reason why it doesn't really matter is that this group is not really that dangerous. That's the group I just fought is the scary one. These guys just kind of move and take it. I mean, they're not really that dangerous. So see, that regal dress is just accepting of its life on the dirt. So we just stay at long range where they're not really thinking about us. Now I'm gonna dash forward again to hit this regal dress. Like I said, being at range here, they just kind of become very passive and we're all good. Now we have just a few more enemies to take out actually at this point. Just have to clean up a small group of little VTs, which since I'm at low HP, I'm going to stay back, not be too risky here. Just because I had gotta be careful. All right, and that's it. It's unfortunate that the supply chopper got destroyed by that bombardment that the regal dress landed, but I got my ammo, which is really what matters. It's the HP isn't that big of a deal at that point, so. All right, so this is the final mission of the 2080 campaign, mission 10. We need to destroy the presidential building, and then there's going to be a mech that drops that's called the Juggernaut, and it is by far the strongest mech in the game. As far as New Game Plus is concerned, that is the mech we would be using throughout the run mostly. However, the AI for the Juggernaut isn't particularly bright, so we're going to be cheesing it yet again by staying at a very long distance and chipping away at it with missiles and railgun. There is a faster strat here that involves the plasma torch, but the thing is that if you do mess up that strat, you are basically a sitting duck in the middle of several regal dresses, and they are particularly dangerous with your assassination strategy of slicing through the night like a dagger. So it's better in a marathon situation just to kind of hang in the back. Take it easy. be careful, you know. So this is the city, presidential city, the capital. We're just gonna drive past everything. It doesn't really matter. Hopefully the VITS coming up does not get in our way, because that is annoying. I'll have to drive around it. So I didn't really talk about this, but you probably noticed at this point this game is fairly laggy. The frame rate can really dip, especially in this city, because there's so many like buildings and enemies and all that. And it can get kind of bad in certain missions, particularly the last mission in this game. Not this mission, but the last mission of the other campaign. The frame rate can really chug, but honestly, I kind of see it as totally fine. It makes the game more tactical in a way with the lower frame rate overall. That might seem like a kind of just like a, you know, excuse, but this game is not really a twitch shooter per se. It's more about planning and approach and strategy and tactics. So I think it kind of fits that the game's a little bit laggy. They were really trying to push the hardware. Excuse me. So we're gonna dash up the hill and fire at the building here. The railgun. Just a few hits and it's down. And here's the juggernaut. So we're just kind of spamming at it. Okay, he chaffed. Alright, the chaff is still deployed. Nice. Just be patient. Alright, it's down. So at this point, we just ride off into the sunset, and time ends once mission complete appears on screen. Any minute now. We gotta wait for the thing to completely be destroyed. Alright, there we go. So that's a 47:45 real time. And that's also with starting time when I booted up the Xbox, which did lose me like, I don't know, 40 seconds or something. So that is 2080 campaign of Steel Battalion, new game, done in under 50 minutes. There were some scary points at this run, but I didn't actually need to use too many supply drops, which is great. This game has come a long way since I started running it. I did my first initial set of runs back 2 years ago. And nearly 3 years ago, actually. In 2017. So I want to give some quick shout outs to people in the Steel Battalion community, because yes, there is a community around this game. Shout outs to Chef Tig, who recently picked up this game and helped improve the route, which has been a really big help in trying to make this game faster. We've cut over 15 minutes from the previous record, which is pretty insane. I want to also shout out Sheepdog, who helped with the routing as well in some pretty vital ways, such as suggesting the azimuths. And the Steel Battalion Line of Contact X-Link Kai community, who have been playing the multiplayer game. Yes, there is a multiplayer game for Steel Battalion. It's the sequel called Line of Contact. They have been very supportive and really cool community. I mean, it is niche, but people are very passionate about this game. It is a cult game. So yes, this is a demonstration of Steel Battalion. I've tried my best to explain all the buttons I could that are relevant, but now looking at it, it's like, oh, I didn't explain you could close the monitor out and all this stuff. But the core elements of this game really are based on the idea of operating a vertical tank, multitasking all the gearing, the shifting, etc., and, well, fighting. So that's going to be it for me. Thank you very much for watching and your consideration. This has been Steel Battalion, and my name is Plywood. Thank you very much.